Marty, what are you doing?
I want to feel what it's like to be an astronaut, so I'm doing puffy head bird legs.
Puffy head bird legs? Anna, you're an astronaut. Is this a thing?
Yes, actually, Beth, it really is. When you're out on the pad, getting ready to launch with your legs in that position, the blood that pools in your legs goes up into your central venous system and then makes your head look puffy. When you see astronauts on orbit, due to the fluid shifts, you'll see that their faces are puffy. Gets rid of all those wrinkles, which is nice, and then also your legs get skinnier.
Huh.
See, puffy head bird legs.
You still look goofy.
Looks like you guys are going to need a little bit more time to talk about this.
We've got some time.
This is
STEM in 30.
Hi, I'm Marty.
And I'm Beth, and we are coming to you live from the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., from the Moving Beyond Earth Gallery.
Today we are joined by NASA astronaut and medical doctor Michael Barrett. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
My pleasure. It looks like some really interesting kids here today.
We have over 100 kids in the audience today ready to ask you some great questions.
We also want to remind those of you who are watching online, you can submit questions. We may take some of them on the air. If not, we do have an expert standing by to answer them for you.
Speaking of questions, we are going to start with a game that we call Lightning Round, where we're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions.
Okay, so Michael, we're going to have some of our friends come up here. They're going to ask you a question. You only have 60 seconds to answer as many as you can, and I get to ring my bell.
Pressure's on.
All right, come on up, guys. Let's have the clock, please. All right, are you ready? Come on up. Let's go.
What are your degrees in?
I'm sorry?
What are your degrees in?
My degrees are in zoology, medicine, and aerospace physiology.
What was more fun, launching on the space shuttle or Soyuz?
Launching on Soyuz.
What was your favorite landing, the space shuttle or the Soyuz?
Definitely the shuttle.
What is your favorite thing to do in space?
Looking at the Earth from space.
What is your least favorite job as an astronaut?
Fixing the toilet.
Favorite thing to look at on Earth?
Glaciers.
Longest you ran on the treadmill in space?
45 minutes on the treadmill for me.
What's your favorite part of training?
I think hanging out with my crewmates.
What's your favorite book?
I think the Voyage of the Endeavour, biography of Cook.
Pen or pencil?
iPad.
What was the thing you were looking for the most forward to when you got back to Earth?
Seeing my family again.
A role model or a hero?
I think Captain James Cook.
If you had a chance, would you go back into space?
Like that.
Would you take a trip to Mars?
Yep, like that.
Were you scared during launch?
If you're not a little bit scared during lunch, you don't know where you are.
And that's it. That's all the time we've got. Outstanding job. Beth, how many did you get to?
Got 16, and since you're our first astronaut, this is the bar everyone else has to beat.
All right.
Now, we talked a little bit about puffy head bird legs at the beginning of the show. Did you experience that at all?
Well, sure. Everybody experiences a little bit of it, both lying on the pad when all that fluid shifts from your legs to your chest, and when you get into zero gravity, that shift happens in earnest and doesn't reverse. And so everybody gets a little bit of a head fullness, and the legs start to get skinny because you lose the fluid and you start to lose muscle mass.
Well, we got a chance to talk to another astronaut and medical doctor, Kjell Lindgren, about this fluid shift. Check it out.
One of the significant things that we experience when we get into space or weightlessness is this thing called the fluid shift. And that's because on Earth, our cardiovascular systems have to work against gravity. As you stand up, all of the blood wants to flow down into your legs and lower body. And so we have a number of physiologic systems that counteract that push the blood back up into the chest and especially up to the head to make sure that the brain continues to get blood. All of those systems continue to work in space, but in the absence of gravity, in the absence of gravity pulling blood down into the legs, it results when you get into weightlessness of a shift of all the blood and fluid that's in your legs, or most of it, up into your chest and head. So that results in everybody getting, we call facial edema, or their faces get kind of puffy. You have a sense of congestion. All of the tissues inside your nose and sinuses become engorged, and so you feel kind of like you have a head cold. You get a sense of head fullness, and some people might even develop a headache. And then if you were to look at our legs, we kind of describe them as bird legs because they look really skinny. Even if you worked out a lot and your legs are muscular, everybody's legs look very skinny and thin. So that is the fluid shift that occurs in space, and it lasts until you get back down to the ground and have gravity pulling that fluid back down into your legs. It has some important physiologic implications, one of which is that we think that fluid shift causes an increase in pressure around the brain, and that pressure can be transmitted along the optic nerve into the eye and increase the pressure in the eye and actually change the shape of the eye such that it makes the eye flatter. And I found that I actually had to wear reading glasses in space where I don't on the ground. For some astronauts, it's actually resulted in permanent changes to the eye. And so we have a whole research program right now with a lot of diagnostic tools on the space station to track and investigate these changes and to figure out what else is going on to cause these vision changes. And I was very grateful when I returned back to the Earth and the fluids redistributed, that my eyesight went back to normal. But this is an important problem for us to figure out for future astronauts.
Michael, I've heard that the fluid shift can affect your taste buds. Did it affect you at all?
Everyone's a little bit different. It didn't seem to affect me because I ate a lot while I was up there, and I really love to eat.
All right, well, some of our friends at the Johnson Space Center Food Lab sent us some samples of food just like what would go up to the International Space Station. And we've got Angelo and Sinai, and they're going to help us out and do a little taste test here. But how do you drink something like this?
Well, it's a good question. We can't have an open cup up there because there's no gravity, right? You can't pour liquid because it would just go all over the place. You'd have little bubbles of liquid everywhere. So everything has to be in a drink bag, like you might have seen a Capri Sun or something like that. And we typically find these just flat with a little bit of powder, and this one would have been lemonade. And we put a little bit of water, but I want to show you how we do it. We basically have a machine that has a big needle and a syringe inside the machine, and we will put that through a little port, and we will inject a little bit of water. And this is a cold drink, and sometimes we will inject this and then we'll pop it into the fridge to make it cold for us. And then once it has the right amount of water, we squish it up and make sure all that powder gets distributed in the water. And then we have our straw. Now this straw is not your ordinary straw. It's got a little valve in it. And if that valve is open, you can drink through it. It also means the bag can leak. So you always want to be sure that that valve is closed. You hear that click, and then you put it in your drink. If you don't, you will have lemonade in your hair or somewhere else. So once it's in there, then you're ready to drink. So we're going to have our friends Sinai and Angelo try this. Now I will pop, now actually you pop that open. Just pull that little tab up. Harder. Good job. And now you have to just suck it through a straw like you normally would. Space lemonade.
All right, so you've got orange drink. Angelo, how is it?
It tastes like regular orange.
Just tastes like regular orange?
Yeah.
Good.
All right, what about you?
Well, it's kind of sour, but it tastes like lemon instead of because with lemonade it's lemon and sugar. It just tastes like lemon.
Yeah. All right, nice. All right, well, let's move on to our main course today, and we have some mac and cheese that we're going to try.
Okay, so when we find a packet of mac and cheese, it looks like this, and we see a little label on the outside, a little tiny thing that says macaroni and cheese. So we'll open that, and I'm going to have Sinai pull the package out of there. And you have another plastic package which says
Macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese. But it also says add 100 mils of hot water, which is about a little over 3 ounces, and then leave it for about 10 to 15 minutes. So we just did that before the show. And what we did was put in that hot water with the machine. We used this actually. And then we squished it up. And then it's more or less ready to eat. Now what we want to do is open it carefully because we don't want mac and cheese in the atmosphere either, because there's no gravity, nothing settles out, and anything that's in the air is going to get in your hair or you're going to breathe it in or something like that. So we're always real careful with that. And we take scissors and we cut it very carefully. And we do usually an X pattern. I'll do a half an X pattern today because we don't want this to escape here either.
And in space, the surface tension of the water in there will actually help keep it in the container, right?
Absolutely, right. Now this actually should set a little bit longer, but I think it'll be fine. It'll be a little bit more like mac and cheese soup. So I will hold it if you want to take a little bit. Don't get it on your clothes. Your mothers will be after me.
All right, I got to try it.
All right.
This stuff came in a few days ago, and I've been Dying to try it.
Special space mac and cheese. What does it taste like, Angelo?
Tastes good.
What's that?
It tastes good.
Good. Does it taste remotely like macaroni and cheese?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. It tastes like mac and cheese, just
Excellent.
soupy.
Yeah, it's a little bit soupy. But that's exactly how we eat it, though. And usually it'll thicken up a little bit with time. But most of the foods taste exactly like they're advertised. So we have spaghetti, we have beef stroganoff, we have rice, we have vegetables, we have all sorts of really good food up there. So we eat well.
All right, so we're going to move on to dessert. We have some apricot cobbler. My mom loves apricots, and so I'm really anxious to try this, but when we got it, feel that.
I feel like applesauce.
Say it again.
I feel like applesauce.
Yeah.
Go ahead and
Does that feel like cobbler? If somebody was going to serve you cobbler, is that what you'd expect?
No.
Not really, yeah. But again, we have to keep these in these packs so they don't go floating through the atmosphere. So when we get ready to open them, there's no gravity, but you can shake something down so you know that it's always at that bottom. Otherwise, if you cut it down here, you'll have cobbler everywhere. So then we're going to take our scissors again, and we're going to cut right across the top. And one thing we have in space is our special space spoons, which we don't quite have here today, but these are good enough. And they're really long, so they can get to the bottom of all of these. Now, that probably looks a little bit more like cobbler. And what I'm going to do is roll it up from the bottom.
it's almost like a tube of toothpaste.
Absolutely, and you keep it from escaping, and there you go. Take a good bite. There you go. Be brave. Excellent. There you go. Angelo he's got this down. What do you think?
It good.
It's good. All right. What do you think?
It doesn't taste that bad. It just looks weird.
It does look weird, but remember what we do is we package things so that they can last a long time and be stored for a long period of time in space. Not so much so that they look really good, but I think in general they taste really good.
It's definitely sweet, that's for sure.
Yep.
Now, Michael, one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier, all of these have Velcro patches on the back of it. Why Velcro on these?
So because things float away, if you leave anything down, like this pair of scissors, it's just going to float away. So Velcro allows us to take things. In fact, I'm going to use this because this one's a little heavy. Yep, that one doesn't have one. Velcro allows us to stick things places, like I have Velcro here. And then I can forget about it, and I can just go on about my business. So we have Velcro everywhere just so we can put things there so they don't float away. So every food item we have has Velcro on it.
Awesome. So are you guys ready to try to go into space and have some food?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Well, nice job, guys.
Great. Thanks.
So nice job. You guys can head off this way. You ready to take some more questions, Michael?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's start with an online question. What if an astronaut suddenly got a tooth cavity with severe pain? Do you get training in how to deal with that?
That's a great question. We always train a couple of people in the space station to do medical things, to almost like a paramedic, and we do get dental training, and we have some tools up there. So even if we had to take a tooth out, extract a tooth, we could do that. We'd have a lot of help from our dental consultants on the ground.
Wow. All right, let's go to an audience question.
Is there a night and day?
Is there a night and day? So we go around the Earth 16 times a day because we're going that fast, which means we would see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets. And we can't really work that way. So we basically decide when it's night and day by turning on the lights and turning off the lights.
Okay. Let's go to an online question. What's your least favorite astronaut food and what's your favorite?
You know, I don't really have a least favorite food, and I'm kind of reputable for that. I kind of liked everything, for better or worse. But favorite food, shrimp cocktail is amazing up there, and the Russian lamb stew is also amazing. So.
And I noticed on all of the packaging that it's not only in English, but it's also in Russian.
Absolutely. Russian and English are the main languages of station. So even if you come from Japan or Europe and you speak German, you still have to speak Russian and English. So everybody has to learn Russian to fly on station.
Awesome. All right, we've got an audience question.
Are movies about space accurate?
Are movies about space accurate? Some of them are better than others. None of them are quite accurate because they're mostly about storytelling. But I can tell you that we at NASA absolutely loved The Martian. It wasn't quite accurate in everything, but it captured NASA extremely well.
Awesome. All right, we've got another audience question.
What are the daily activities on the ISS?
So that's a very big question. We get up in the morning, we talk to the ground about what we're going to do all day, and then we work. We do experiments, we do maintenance, we repair things, we do photography of the Earth. We have to exercise 2.5 hours every day. And then when evening comes and we're all done with our work, we have dinner as a crew together, and we send a lot of our pictures down to the ground. And then we are already looking over what we're going to do the next day. So it's very much a work environment. It's like living in a laboratory.
Wow. So great questions, guys, both in the audience and online. Now, we did get a chance to talk to Kjell Lindgren also about space motion sickness. Check this out.
So about 70% of first-time flyers will experience what's called space motion sickness or spaced adaptation syndrome. And it has some similarities to motion sickness back here on Earth. And we think that motion sickness occurs because of a difference between what our eyes are seeing and what our inner ear, our vestibular system, is sensing. And that disconnect tells the brain that something weird is going on and gives you that sense of nausea or motion sickness. So when I got into space, initially I actually felt great. I was hungry, and my Russian colleagues were like, "Oh, you're doing great, no problem." I was eating, and then after about 4 hours of being up there, I took a nap, and when I woke up, I was feeling pretty crummy. And for the next 48 hours, for the next 2 days, I didn't feel very well. I felt nauseated. But after that, after kind of this adaptation period, I felt great, and I was excited to get to work.
Now, Michael, one of the important things is to keep yourself healthy is you have to exercise. And how's your running going here?
I'm getting tired.
You're getting tired, okay. Can you run like this on the International Space Station?
Well, so when we run, we have to run on a treadmill because we don't have a big open expanse to run on. And it kind of looks like this with one exception, and that if you remember in space, is there any gravity? No, so you just float away. If you tried to push your foot against the surface, you'd float away. So what we have to do is tie ourselves down, and we have these elastic cords that would anchor to the bottom there on the either side of the treadmill, and then they attach to our waist right here. So when we run, we look kind of like that, except we have a bit of a bounce. So we go like this, and we bounce against these things. And we can turn the gravity up or down depending on how tight these things are. And so it's a different kind of running, but it actually feels very, very good to run. And it keeps our legs strong, and it helps us remember how to walk and run on gravity.
So let's see what you can stop.
Well done.
Thank you. What are you doing?
Biking.
Biking to where?
I don't know.
Is this how you cycle in space?
It is exactly how we cycle. We have 2 bicycles, and both of them have little seats. So it's not like you're upright on a normal bicycle. It's like a seated bicycle, except there's no gravity holding you down to that seat. You just kind of hold on with your hands. And bicycling feels really good, and we need that to keep our heart and lungs strong up there so that we're fit to come down. And if you're really good at biking, you can do it for 90 minutes at a time. It takes us 90 minutes to make one orbit around the world. So if you cycle for 90 minutes, then you could say, I biked around the world, which is kind of cool. But we do this really hard. So we get our heart rate up high, we get our air moving really good, we sweat a lot, but it just feels really good exercise.
So what's more fun, biking on the Earth or biking around it?
Oh, biking around it is pretty cool, but I do like biking on Earth as well.
Okay, we've got one last station. Are you working up a sweat yet?
Not really.
We need bigger weights.
But it is different than doing it normally.
Yeah. And so what I've asked him to do is a little bit different. I've given him some weights, and he's a big, strong guy, so he can do this easy. And our upper body is important to keep strong, especially to be ready for spacewalking. But where we lose bone and muscle is mostly in our legs. And so what I've asked him to do is add deep knee bends to that to give some really big loads to those muscles. And when you think about it, we don't have any gravity up there, right? And when he's doing his knee bends, he's lifting his body weight, right? What is your body weight in space? Less than it is. Absolutely nothing. Nothing weighs anything. So it wouldn't help him much to exercise just by doing this, although it's helping him now. But we have to put that back. We have to put that force back. And we have a special machine called a resistive exercise machine. I think you've done enough. You've done extremely well. But don't go anywhere. We have a special machine that will lay a bar across your shoulders. And the same type of thing. It gives you a lot of force. And when you come up, you're resisting that force, and it gives you a big load, up to 600 pounds, in fact, to lift instead of having your body weight to lift there.
So you don't have barbells?
We do not have barbells. They would mean nothing. Same with these little dumbbells. They would mean nothing. But you have to have a machine that gives you that resistance. And so we spend an hour and a half every day doing heavy resistive exercise. and we spend another hour each day either running on a treadmill or bicycling. So 2.5 hours a day of exercise.
Yeah, keeping fit is important, especially when you come back to Earth, and we talked a little bit to Kjell Ingrid about that.
The absence of gravity is somewhat overwhelming, so the ability to float is absolutely incredible, but it means that it's a pretty big change when you come back to Earth and experience gravity again. My mind immediately adjusted to gravity. We all grew up in this gravity environment, so I very quickly, it felt normal to be in gravity, but the effect of gravity, the heaviness that I felt, how everything felt so heavy when I picked it up, that took a lot of getting used to. And so really over the course of 2 weeks, my vestibular system adjusted so that I didn't feel quite as dizzy. And then after about a month, my body really kind of got back to normal, and all of the aches and pains associated with living and working in gravity again disappeared.
Ready for a few more questions?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start with an online question. How long do astronauts sleep each night on the ISS?
That's a good question. We actually get at least 8.5 hours of scheduled sleep time, but we find that most astronauts sleep a lot less than that. For me, 6 hours was perfect. For some, it's a little less even, but most 7.
Okay. All right, we've got an audience question.
How do you stay in contact with your family?
We have, believe it or not, a telephone up there that we use. It's an internet telephone that goes to a satellite, but I could call my family every day, and that's really cool. Psychologically, it's really cool. And I could ask my kids if they got their homework done and stuff like that.
One of our curators got a phone call from one of the astronauts on the ISS, and I was very disappointed because it sounded like he was in the next room. It didn't sound like he was 250 miles out.
Our engineers are pretty good.
All right, let's go to an online question. Do you have a first aid kit in space?
We actually have a little medical kit up there, which is actually quite big, much bigger than a first aid kit, and somewhere between a first aid kit and what an ambulance would carry. So we're ready for a lot of different types of medical emergencies that could happen in space.
Okay. Go to an audience question.
Which do you like more, exercising with gravity or without?
I would have to say without, because if I'm exercising without, then I'm in space, and I really love being in space. Good question.
All right, let's go to an online question. Do astronauts on the ISS eat meals together at the same time each day?
Good question. And every crew is a little bit different. There's 6 of us up there normally, and everyone is on their own timeline for working, but the meal schedule is more or less synchronized. My crew, in fact, there's my crew. We ate lunch and dinner together every day. For us, it was really, really important. And as a crew of 6 people, we got along extremely well. We loved hanging out. And then a lot of times we would go back to work after dinner, but it was that important for us to all work or to eat together.
How important was that to work well together, and how did you guys deal with conflicts?
It was extremely important. Because of that, we were able to know, like I knew what was going on in the Russian segment. My Russian colleagues knew what was going on in ours. We knew what was coming in their timelines, what was breaking, what was working, how we could help each other. But we told jokes, we sang songs, we solved the world's problems. One person was responsible for bringing music every night. And so we had country western, we had heavy metal, we had the Brandenburg concertos, and everything in between. Hip hop, rap, you name it.
Awesome. All right, we've got an audience question.
Can you describe how urine is recycled on the space station?
Okay, so I'll make it very simple. You pee into a hose, and the hose is attached to a machine. You turn on the machine, and about a week and a half later, you get fresh water out. Now, we recycle about 85% of our urine and sweat, which is pretty good because it means you don't have to launch a bunch of this. What is water? It's heavy. Every time you launch a pound of water, that's a pound of something else you didn't launch. But if you can take 85% of that pound that you peed out and drink it again, it's great. Now, I simplified it, but we have a very good set of machinery up there which distills it. The water we get out of there is much purer than you would get out of your tap. So it's nice to know where your next drink is coming from.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great.
My pleasure.
We'd like everybody to tune in next month as we will be coming to you live from the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Check this out. I'm at the Richmond International Raceway, and these cars were racing around this track at upwards to 175 miles per hour. Now, sometimes there are accidents, but for the most part, the drivers walk away. Ever wonder what keeps them safe? If you have, be sure to check out the next 7:30.
Be sure to stick around for a few minutes after the credits. We're going to ask Michael a few more questions. And as we leave you today, we're going to leave you with the sights and sounds of the launch of STS-133, a flight that Michael was on, the last flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. We would also like today to dedicate this broadcast to astronaut Piers Sellers, who recently lost his battle with cancer. Thanks for watching.
Two, one. Booster ignition and the final liftoff of Discovery. A tribute to the dedication, hard work, and pride of America's Space Shuttle team. The shuttle has cleared the tower.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking around. Michael, you ready for some more questions?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start with an online question. Where do you sleep in space?
So we have little tiny sleep quarters about the size of a phone box, but probably none of you know what a phone booth is, but it's very small. And we put our sleeping bags in there and we tie them down, mostly so we don't float away when we sleep. And we sleep really, really well, just kind of floating there like this. It's great.
Is it a lot more comfortable than here on Earth?
For some people, yes. For some people, it takes a while to get used to it because you're used to the feel against of your body against the mattress, and that's totally gone. But after a while, you work hard all day, you're tired at night. We love our bunk time. So.
Awesome. All right, let's go to an audience question.
Are there any permanent effects from being in space?
Yes, there are. And it's interesting, Dr. Lindgren talked about the eye thing that we're seeing, and if you were to do an x-ray of my head, you would see that my right eye is a little bit squished. The ball of the eye itself is flattened and the optic nerve is about twice normal. And that's a permanent change. It doesn't cause me any trouble, it doesn't change what I do during the day, but that's a permanent change. So there are a few things that happen, mostly not though. Mostly you just get back used to 1G, 1 gravity again.
All right, let's go to an online question. Do you think artificial gravity in space will ever be possible?
So artificial gravity is definitely possible. It's a little bit difficult because you either have to spin a spaceship or a large part of the spaceship, or you have to make a small device that an astronaut can get on and spin around, something like a merry-go-round or what we would call a centrifuge. But it puts back some of the loads of gravity that your body likes to maintain its bone and muscle. I'm sure that we'll see that in our future.
Okay, let's go to an audience question.
What do they do with the bodily waste in space?
What do they do with the bodily waste in space?
So get ready. The urine we recycle, and about 85% of the pee that you put in the toilet is going to be sterilized and distilled, and it's going to end up in your orange drink. And that's kind of neat because you recycle it, you don't have to launch it. Water is very heavy, and we don't want to launch it into space all the time. We don't have to. We'd like to recycle 100% of it. It's awesome. Number 2, we put in a can and we put it in a freighter that is going to burn up in the atmosphere, and it burns. Eventually we're going to recycle that too.
Has a whole new meaning to a shooting star, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm glad we didn't tell our volunteers about, what we made the drink out of.
Always better to save that.
All right, let's go to an audience question.
How many people can live in a space station?
Right now, the permanent crew of the station is 6 people, and hopefully we'll be up to 7 people in a couple of years.
Now, the size of the crew actually changed while on your mission, right?
That's right. We went from 3 permanent crew up to 6 permanent crew, and then occasionally we had visiting space shuttles who would bring up 6 or 7 people. So for quite a while, we had 13 people on board.
Imagine I got a little cramped.
Not that the station is big, so not so much.
All right, let's go to another audience question.
How do you go to the bathroom in space?
Very carefully, because there's no gravity. And you want to make sure that everything goes where it's supposed to go. So instead of gravity, we use airflow. And if you want to pee, whether you're a guy or a girl, you get kind of close to this little machine, you turn on a fan, and it makes the urine go into this tank. And the same is true with number 2. So it's actually very easy. Everybody kind of freaks out about it for their first time, but once you do it, it's like, oh, I could do this forever, which you do for 6 months.
Did you have to practice that in training?
You know, we did a little bit practice and training, but it almost doesn't help you because there's no way to simulate zero gravity. You get up there, you learn it, and you press on.
All right, another audience question?
Could you explain the size of the space, comparing it to something else?
Sure. The size of the space station, if anybody's ever seen a 747 jumbo jet, it's about the size of the larger 747-400s or a submarine. In fact, I flew with one of my crewmates who was a submarine guy. And we got on the station, and I'd already lived up there for 6.5 months, and I showed him around, and I said, if this were a submarine, how many people would be here? And he said, 130. So submarines are very cramped, and a lot of people. We're pretty big, and we only have 6 people.
Wow.
So it's pretty big.
How do we help our astronauts recover from space travel?
How do we help them prepare?
Recover.
Oh, recover. Okay, great question. We get used to zero gravity, and we get used to moving around with no gravity, and when you get to the ground, it can be very, very difficult. So we have a team of experts who do what we call spaceflight rehabilitation that help us kind of get used to Earth gravity and used to the balance that's required to just kind of move around on the Earth. And we have to be very gentle and very progressive very gradual about how we get better. And typically it's a day or 2 before you can even walk, and it's a week before you can walk well, and it's about 6 weeks until you're more or less totally recovered.
Wow, great question. All right, let's go to another one.
Does being in space stretch your body out?
Yes, it does. You get taller in space, and it's because your spine lengthens out a little bit, and the curve that's in everybody's normal spine straightens out a little bit. So people grow between 1 and 2 inches, sometimes a little bit more. But unfortunately, you lose it when you get back.
But they also have to account for that in designing the spacesuits, don't
Absolutely. If you're designing a spacesuit or a seat or a workstation, you have to remember that the body is not the same in space.
Oh, all right. Another question?
Do you take showers after you exercise in space? How does that work?
So we do not take showers. If you think about what is a shower, but it's kind of a gravity water machine, right? So water comes out and gravity kind of throws it over your body and then it drains off. We've tried showers in space and they don't work. They throw a little water on you and then it just sits there. And you get the sheen of water that you then have to towel off. So we tried it, the Russians tried it. Doesn't work, we don't do it anymore. You just use wet rags and you towel off and it works beautifully.
Another
What were
question?
your living accommodations on the space station?
So you have a pretty big station. You have an exercise area, sort of like the gym. You have a kitchen area like the galley. And then you have work areas in the laboratory. But everybody has their personal space, which is really, really important. So that little telephone booth size place where we sleep, that's also where you keep your pictures of family and personal items. And having that little personal space is a really good thing. So everybody's got that.
Did you take anything cool with you up when you went?
I took pictures of my family, and because I'm a sailing freak and a sailing history nut, I took a model ship that I was building. It was a model of the Endeavour, in fact. So.
Nice. All right, another audience question?
Is it difficult to relearn to walk once you get back to Earth?
It's interesting. Because you've been walking all your life, it's not so hard to relearn to walk when you get back as it is to learn to float when you're going up there for the first time. You know how to do it, you're just not strong enough to do it. So when you think, okay, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do, one foot in front of the other, and then you try to turn a corner and your balance system is so off you fall to the outside. So there's some difficulty, but it's not so much because you don't know how, it's because your body is not used to it. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
Is there a lot of bumping into stuff when you first go?
Yep. Say that quick. And a lot of times, because what we call the pitch axis, the up and down axis is very sensitive. So when people lean over to tie their shoes for the first time, they might continue in face plant. So you have to be extremely careful there, or doing stairs or anything like that for the first few days.
All right, go ahead.
What would happen if you didn't exercise in space?
You would become a bowl of jelly. If you didn't exercise in space, you would lose bone at a rate of maybe a couple of % per month, and you'd lose a lot of muscle mass. You'd be extremely weak when you came back, and it would be very, very hard on you. We don't want to do that.
Okay. Other audience question?
Is sleeping on the ISS comfortable?
Everybody's a little bit different. Some people like the feel of their body weight against a mattress or their head against a pillow. And when they get up there in space where there's no gravity and they're just floating, it kind of feels freaky. In fact, for some people, they actually put a band around their head and tie it back to the back wall of the sleeping compartment so they kind of feel that pressure. For me, I just love to float and sleep. And when you're tired, you're going to sleep, I guarantee you.
Go ahead.
What are some everyday things that are dangerous to take into space?
Everything to take into space?
Like everyday things, like objects we'd use.
Well, we have a really hard limit on a lot of things. We don't want any fire up there, because fire is bad, especially in zero gravity. We don't want anything that might be toxic or poisonous, because down here, if you had something that you needed, but it had some human poisonous or toxicity to it, you could keep it in a bottle. Up there, if you opened it to use it, it would go in the atmosphere. So you don't want any of that. You don't want anything that's going to shed particles, because they're going to get in your eye and your nose and you're going to breathe. And you don't want anything that, if it does catch fire, is going to make a lot of toxic smoke. So we have a very, very strict set of rules about what we can take from that safety aspect. It's a very insightful question, actually.
All right. What country are you in when you're in the ISS, and what time zone do you use?
Excellent question. You are on international territory, so we're not in any particular country, but because we have so many international partners and mission control centers, we decided to split the difference, and we're on Greenwich Mean Time. That's from England, basically. And you have to speak English and Russian to work on the space station. So we're like our own little country.
All right, let's go to another audience question.
Does the lack of gravity pull you apart, and do you get taller?
No, yes. So the lack of gravity does not pull you apart so much, but it changes your whole body shape in many ways. One of those ways is to make you taller, because normally right now gravity is compressing my spine this way. But take away the gravity, the spine gets a little longer, and the curve that's normally in everybody's back straightens out. So adults will grow an inch, inch and a half, sometimes 2 inches.
All right, let's go to an online question. Does the food go stale in space?
That's a really good question, and we worry about that a lot, which is why we use food like this. It's packaged and it's sterile, and it can last for really years. And the same with the dehydrated food. Once we take all the water out of it, vacuum pack it, it's good for years. As soon as you put water in it, or as soon as you open a pack, then it potentially could get stale or start to rot on you. So we're very careful about how we manage the food.
Was there anything that you really missed when you were up in space?
I think fresh fruit and vegetables are probably the main thing, because everything we have, for the most part, has to be preserved. So crunching a nice cold apple was one of the first things I wanted when I got back.
Do you feel jet lag in space?
Actually, jet lag is one of our biggest problems, because you have to change time zones from where you launch to getting onto the space station, which is Greenwich Mean Time. So you get over that over a few days, and that's important because we really want to be well rested up there.
All right, let's go to an audience question.
How does it feel on your spine and back muscles in microgravity?
It's a really good question. A lot of people actually get back pain because the spine is stretching out, and it's probably those ligaments between the vertebrae, your backbones, stretching, which gives you a little bit of back pain. And fortunately, it goes away after about a week or so. But a large number of people get back pain. It's called space adaptation back pain for that reason. And then it gets better, and then we're fine, and we're taller, which rocks.
All right, let's go to an online question. How long does it take to put on a spacesuit?
That's a great question. If you're in a hurry, you want to be able to put on a spacesuit within 5 minutes or so. And we actually trained to do that with the Russian suit, and we're trying to be able to do that with our new generation suits as well. And the reason is, if there's a problem in space and you spring a leak or there's a fire or whatever, you need to be able to get into your spacesuit really quickly.
Go to an audience question.
How big of a danger is radiation for people traveling to Mars?
Radiation is the #1 danger for people traveling to Mars. And you don't think about it, but when you're out in deep space, there's a lot of radiation out there. It comes from the sun. It comes from other stars, which we call galactic cosmic radiation. And your body does not like high doses of radiation. And what it translates to is an increased risk of cancer later on. So we want to fly fast, and we want to be shielded from that radiation. Good question.
It doesn't affect men and women equally, does it?
Interestingly, women are a little bit more sensitive to the effects of radiation. And so the limit is a little bit lower. Now, having said that, our second biggest risk is this eye thing, the intracranial pressure thing, and men are more susceptible to that. So it's about an even trade there, but I can tell you that men and women do pretty much equally. We have astronauts and commanders. Every role has been filled by both men and women in space.
All right, let's go to an online question. What happens if you spill something inside the ISS?
Well, first of all, it doesn't look like a normal spill. So if I turn this over here, there's water everywhere, but it's all here. If I shook this, that's what we call a spill in zero-G, and it's everywhere. It's a three-dimensional spill, if you will. And you don't want that. If it's water, it's no big deal. You just get wet. But if it's something that's harmful to you, or particles or something like that, then you're going to breathe them in, and that's a bad thing. So we keep everything as contained as possible to avoid spills.
Go back to the audience.
How does sleep work in space?
And what do you sleep in?
So mostly we sleep pretty well because we get pretty tired, but we find that astronauts sleep a little bit less in space than they would normally do on the ground. We have sleeping bags up there, and if you were to look at our little sleep stations, a lot of people say, hey, how come you guys are sleeping upside down? Well, remember, there is no up or down up there, right? So we look like we're tacked to the wall, but we're really not. We're just in our sleeping bags, and they're tied to the wall. It is possible for people to get so tired that they just fall asleep while they're working. And you find that out because you think, they haven't said anything for 5 minutes, and you look over and they're floating through the module just to sleep because there's no gravity, there's no nothing, they just float and they sleep. So we look forward to our bunk time up there just like down here.
Awesome. All right, another online question. What happens to your sweat on the ISS?
Well, your sweat goes into the air, and then it goes into a special air conditioning system which condenses it out, cleans it, and then it becomes potable water. You drink it. Sounds awful, doesn't it?
All right, we've got an audience question next.
Are there any notable physical effects of flying in space?
There are many. So your body, every system in your body changes. Your bone, your muscle, your heart, your lungs, the shape of your body, your balance system. What we're finding now is that the brain changes as well. Most of those changes reverse back. And basically, it's a good thing because you become a space creature. And those changes are good. But they're bad when you come home and you have to be an Earth creature again. But everything changes. It's really quite wonderful.
Is it easier for blood to clot in space?
That's an excellent question. It is no difference. We were worried that blood would clot too easily in space, actually, for a lot of reasons that I won't go into, but it's one of those things that can cause a risk on the ground if blood clots too easily. As it turns out, there does not seem to be any difference. But we worried about that for a long time.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. Great questions, guys. Be sure to tune in next time.